A common fan theory about the Elder Scrolls games is that the video game discs on which the game data is stored are the Elder Scrolls themselves. That's an interesting theory, but today I'd like to postulate a different theory, one that I feel has even more support in the lore than the currently accepted theory. Perhaps we, the fans, are the Elder Scrolls themselves. What's up guys, Acer Thorn here, and welcome to another video game lore and discussion video. I do these analysis videos on a regular basis, so if you'd like to see more of them, hit that subscribe button to stay notified. So before we can speculate as to what real-life thing the Elder Scrolls corresponds to, it's probably best to look at what the Elder Scrolls are in-game. That way we can use the lore of what the Elder Scrolls are as hints to what they're supposed to be a reference to in real life. So this begs the question, what do we know about the Elder Scrolls? Well, to be perfectly honest, not a whole lot. They were only featured in 2 games up to this point, which is weird when you think about it. I mean, the entire franchise is named after them. Even Metroid, Halo, Zelda, they still had their titular objects and people in their first games, even if they were only seen at the end. What little we do know about them comes mainly from Skyrim. We know that they are prophecies which tell everything that will happen or that could happen in the Elder Scrolls universe. Even if it doesn't happen in their realm, it will happen in another timeline.
It's a reflection of all possible futures and all possible pasts.
Urianga Groshub states that, if an Elder Scroll says it, you can bet your bottom septum that it's true. Even the falsehoods, especially the falsehoods.
But at the same time, all of it is true. Even the falsehoods, especially the falsehoods.
We also know that nobody actually wrote the Elder Scrolls. Urog states that such a question doesn't even make sense.
It would take a month to explain to you how that very question doesn't even make sense.
At the same time, he also admits that they were created by the gods.
They are bits of divine-made substance, so we could know them.
Okay, so the gods created the scrolls without necessarily writing them. More importantly, he says that the scrolls exist both in the realm of Arbus, but also outside of said realm.
The scrolls exist here, with us, but also beyond and beneath.
They are said to exist out of time.
Before and after.
Adding to their complexity is the fact that they don't exist in countable form. This is best demonstrated when a person counts 14 scrolls in a box, takes one out, and now suddenly there are 18 scrolls. And in fact, said a moth priest, there always were. Speaking of the moth priests, we know that they are blindfolded and are instructed to use their eyes solely for reading the Elder Scrolls. Reading said scrolls causes progressive vision loss until they are left entirely blind. Last but not least, the Elder Scrolls are indestructible. Unlike everything else up to this point, this is one trait we can concretely observe in-game. When traveling past, we see 3 of the ancient Nords battling Alduin. One of the ancient Nords, named Feldir, holds the scroll up like a shield, which enables him to take Alduin's fire breath at point-blank range without so much as flinching. This is pretty solid evidence that nothing can damage an Elder Scroll, at least nothing in Nirn. So given what we know about the Elder Scrolls, here's my theory, that we are the scrolls themselves. We, the fans. Every time we create a new character and or reload a previous save, that is the reading of an Elder Scroll. Let's think about this for a minute. These scrolls are indestructible. When a dragon shoots his fire breath at our character, the character might take damage, but we, sitting on the couch holding the controller, are not harmed by what's happening on screen. Therefore, neither are the Elder Scrolls, because we are the Elder Scrolls. The scrolls are a reflection of all possible futures and all possible pasts. This could be seen as a reference to the multiple timelines your playthrough can take, not just by reloading new saves after you die in order to retcon that death, but also by doing quests in a different order, or by completing a quest in a different way than somebody else playing the same game. This is one of the biggest draws of the Elder Scrolls games, non-linearity. Each reader sees a different reflection through different lenses, and may come away with a very different reading. Again, this references the way each player can do each quest at their leisure, make the choices in said quests they want to make. They can kill, steal, blackmail, or be noble and true. Each player will roleplay a slightly different character, aka a different lens, or the eyes through which the world of Tamriel is observed with different morality tints, and will come with a very different reading or play experience than any other player or reader. But at the same time, all of it is true, even the falsehoods, especially the falsehoods. If you rush into a dungeon without thinking and get killed by a Draugr just around the corner who ambushes you, you're going to reload. Only this time you're going to be a little more careful than you were a minute ago, because this time you know there's a Draugr waiting to ambush you. This is something your character in-universe wouldn't have any idea about, but you know from a separate reading of your own memory, information that saves your character's life. This would certainly explain the "especially the falsehoods" line. If you fired up a brand new test game on launch day and played a 100% blind, hardcore role-playing playthrough with no reloads, no walkthroughs, and a one death and the game is over rule, you'd be lucky to last a single day. After about level 50 in Skyrim, you're so powerful that nothing can kill you. But to get that far, you have to die several times and use the lessons from those deaths to your advantage. You can also go online and find walkthroughs to help you in your own playthroughs in lieu of simply dying multiple times. The events of these walkthroughs and past deaths are falsehoods in the sense that they did not happen in your current game's timeline, but they are nevertheless true because the knowledge acquired from these falsehoods is invaluable to crafting your ideal timeline. So just about everything fits. My theory is almost completely in line with everything the Elder Scrolls games have taught us up to this point. But aren't we forgetting something? Just because a theory fits doesn't necessarily make it true. One of my personal favorite fan theories is that Willy Wonka is a cannibal serial killer who uses children for his candy recipes. The reason that this is one of my favorites is because it helps explain quite a few things in the movie that don't make any sense otherwise, like why Wonka only had 8 seats in his boat when he should have had 10. So to help with that issue, let's take a look at some things we can observe in the Elder Scrolls games that don't have any other explanation. First is the character creation. With the exception of the first game, all Elder Scrolls games take place almost exclusively, DLC such as Dragonborn notwithstanding, in only one Tamrielic province. Thus, creating a backstory for your character usually presents no challenge whatsoever, so long as you're playing as one of the 9 races not indigenous to that province. However, if you want to play as a native to that province, like an Imperial in Oblivion or a Breton in Daggerfall, you'll need some pretty impressive mental gymnastics to explain why nobody recognizes you at first, why there's no family for you to visit where you were supposedly born and raised, and how you have no job history or connections of any kind. Accepting that your character just forged out of thin air due to a reading of the Elder Scrolls, which, in real life, from the player's perspective, is indeed exactly what happened. The world itself, as well as the player, formed out of nothing based on a reading of your game. That is the easiest and the least painful explanation out there. But how about something a little bit more specific? Well, in Oblivion's Fighters Guild quest, we learn that the Fighters Guild's biggest competition in Cyrodiil, the Blackwood Company, is using a performance-enhancing substance known as Hist Sap to gain an illegal advantage. But if you really break it down, the explanation given in the game doesn't make any sense. See, when you first take the Hist Sap, you go into a frenzy. You end up killing some innocent villagers under the belief that they are goblins. This is essentially an artistic representation of how the player character might be under a frenzy spell. However, the weird thing is that you experience this effect even if you're an Argonian yourself. When you snap out of it, your boss in the Fighters Guild speculates that the hist sap must have been tampered with in some way, which is how an Argonian like yourself got frenzied when it should have been harmless to Argonians. It is this conclusion, not merely that they use the controlled substance to their advantage, but that they must have tampered with it in illegal ways, that drives your boss to send you in there and start hacking away to shut them down. But if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense. See, every other member of the Blackwood Company seems to be in total control over their actions. Okay, you're probably thinking, maybe they've just been drinking it for so long that they've built up a tolerance to it. Okay, but there's another example out there. Maglir is a wood elf who starts off in the Fighters Guild only to jump ship halfway through the quest line. Maglar also seems to be doing just fine, and we can safely assume he's drinking the sap himself because his main reason for leaving the Fighters Guild in the first place is because they were sending him on missions way too dangerous for far too little pay. But Blackwood is known for taking even more dangerous jobs than the Fighters Guild won't even touch, while charging even less. The only way Maglir would consider Blackwood an improvement is if they gave him some sort of extra help to level the playing field. So if Maglir isn't drinking the sap, why isn't he frenzied? I can think of only one explanation. The hist sap was indeed modified. However, contrary to your boss's speculation, it wasn't modified with reckless disregard to the consequences, but quite the opposite. It was modified so that it would be safe for all Tamrielic races, not just Argonians. The player character is the only person known to be adversely affected by the sap because, although he may look Argonian on the outside, his anatomy and molecular physiology are far different from anything the modified hist sap could have accounted for. And the only way that could be possible is if you were Immaculate Conception. You were literally created by the Elder Scrolls themselves. And who creates the player character in real life? Why, the player, that's who. So if the player creates the player character in real life, and the Elder Scrolls create the player character in-game, then that means that the Elder Scrolls are an in-game analog to the player. Now, everything I discussed up to this point is still consistent with the existing fan theory that the game discs are the Elder Scrolls. However, there are still a few traits of the Elder Scrolls that don't gel well with this theory that they're the game discs, but which suddenly make a lot more sense if we accept my theory that we're the Scrolls. The easiest of these is the fact that the Elder Scrolls don't exist in countable form. If we accept that the Scrolls are the game discs, then how exactly do they not exist in countable form? Bethesda has complete dominion over how many copies of the game discs get printed. Sure, once they get shipped out, Bethesda may lose the ability to track individual game discs, as they will get sold, traded, handed down, etc., but they certainly have the ability to maintain an accurate count of how many game discs are in circulation, not counting illegal copies, but I think it's totally fair if we don't count them. However, this trait of these Scrolls suddenly makes a lot more sense if we accept that the fans are the Scrolls. Bethesda may be able to keep an exact count of how many game discs are printed, but they can't keep an exact count of how many people self-identify as Elder Scrolls fans. The in-game book that establishes that the Scrolls don't exist in countable form talks about how when somebody pulls a scroll out of a cabinet, the cabinet suddenly has even more Elder Scrolls than it previously did. If we accept that the Scrolls are an in-game analog to the fans, then this could be seen as symbolic of alienating some fans in order to bring in new ones. For every one quote-unquote hardcore fan you alienate with features like quest markers, you bring in 4 more fans who see this convenient feature as, well, highly convenient. Another example of the Elder Scrolls lore that doesn't fit if the game discs are the scrolls, but does fit a lot better if the fans are the scrolls, is that the gods created the scrolls without necessarily writing them. The game discs merely store the game's code on it so that it can be played by sticking the disc into your console. However, somebody actually wrote the game code. A team of game developers sat at desks and typed away at keyboards in order to make this game. The source code was literally being written in the traditional sense. But if we accept that the fans are the Elder Scrolls, then it makes a lot more sense. Nobody wrote you or me. We came into existence by being born, not by being written. And I'd like to assume that at least 94% of us were born because our biological parents at some point had sex with each other. Although if somebody out there was born through some other means, post a comment down below. I'll pin that. Then there's the fact that reading the Elder Scrolls causes NPCs to go blind. We can look at the game disc, e.g. to ensure that we're putting the right game into our console, and no harm will come to our own vision. Sure, the console's laserdisc can damage our eyesight, but nobody is theorizing that the game console or its laserdisc are the Elder Scrolls. But if the fans are the Elder Scrolls, well, looking at another human being doesn't make you go blind. But there is a superstition that sometimes gets tossed around in order to discourage teenagers from accessing pornography before they're 18 years old. That doing so will make that person go blind. It is common enough that even if you've never personally been told this superstition directly, you've almost certainly at least heard it referenced in popular culture. The lore that reading an Elder Scroll makes you go blind suddenly makes sense if we accept that it's a reference to that common superstition. Last but not least, if we accept that the game discs are the scrolls, then that means that these scrolls are becoming obsolete. Optical discs are quickly being phased out as a medium for video game storage and distribution. PC gaming has almost completely switched to digital-only media, and consoles are only still using the game discs as a means of installing the games onto the system, which only needs to be done once. So if we accept that the game discs are the scrolls, then that means that the scrolls themselves will eventually become an obsolete part of the Elder Scrolls universe. However, although the game discs might become obsolete in a few years, the fans themselves will always be essential to the Elder Scrolls franchise. So that's basically my theory. The players are the Elder Scrolls themselves. But before I sign off, let me just say one last thing. Regardless of what the Elder Scrolls themselves may be in real life, or if they have any real-life analog, the Elder Scrolls franchise is still fucking awesome. And with that, I bid you all adieu. Ace Thorn out. Peace!